A long time ago in 17th century Holland, there lived a man who was so emotionless that he did not shed a single tear when his father died. This strange man's name was Spinoza, and he would go on to become one of the most influential philosophers of all time. But this story reveals a dark truth about him that no one knew until his death, so keep watching to find out what it is. Welcome back to our channel, where we bring you the craziest and weirdest facts from human history. Some of the things discussed in this video may be offensive or disturbing. Viewer discretion is advised. Baruch Spinoza was born in 1632 in the Dutch Republic to a Sephardic Jewish family from Portugal. His father, Miguel de Spinoza, was a successful merchant and moneylender who had fled persecution in Portugal by converting to Christianity. However, despite converting to Christianity, Miguel still kept many of his Jewish traditions, such as circumcising his son, Baruch, which caused him to be excommunicated from the synagogue at age 9 for being an apostate. After Miguel's death when Spinoza was 23, he took over his father's business and became quite successful himself. Even though he never married, he enjoyed luxuries like fine food and wine, prostitutes, and fast horses. However, after suffering a nervous breakdown in 1664, he abandoned his old life and retreated to a small cottage in the countryside, where he spent his days reading and writing philosophy. This period in Spinoza's life marked a significant change in his outlook on life. He began to question traditional religious beliefs and started to develop his own unique philosophical ideas, based on reason and scientific principles rather than blind faith. One of his most famous and controversial ideas was his view of emotions. Spinoza believed that emotions were not the result of mental activity, but rather bodily processes that could be explained through the laws of physics and mechanics. He argued that emotions are nothing more than disturbances in our minds caused by changes in our bodies, and that instead of being caused by our thoughts and reason, they cause our thoughts and influence our reasoning. According to Spinoza, emotions like fear, sadness, and anger do not serve any purpose and should be avoided. They only lead us away from happiness. He believed that emotions cloud our judgment and prevent us from acting rationally, causing us to make decisions based on feelings rather than reason. He also believed that fear and anger in particular were harmful because they made us focus on things that we cannot control. Spinoza believed that the key to happiness lay in living a virtuous life in accordance with nature. He believed that if we follow our emotions, we will be acting contrary to nature and thus cause ourselves unhappiness. Instead, we should strive to understand the laws of nature and live in harmony with them. In fact, Spinoza developed a system of ethics based on this principle, which he outlined in his book, The Ethics. In this book, he proposed that the ultimate goal of human life should be to achieve a state of tranquility or peace of mind. This state can only be achieved when we stop being disturbed by our emotions and instead focus on understanding the laws of nature and living in accordance with them. Spinoza believed that the best way to achieve this state was to cultivate a love of one, as fellow human beings, and to recognize the beauty of the world around us. However, his views on emotions were not well received by the general public. Many people saw them as immoral and irresponsible, and his ideas were often misunderstood and misrepresented by his critics. Nevertheless, Spinoza remained steadfast in his beliefs and continued to write and publish his work. Now, let's get back to the mysterious story that led us to discover this dark revelation about Spinoza. There is a story about a man who visited Spinoza and found him sitting alone in his room without any visible signs of grief or sadness. When the man asked Spinoza why he was not crying, given that he had just received news of his father's death, Spinoza replied that he was not crying because he was a philosopher. The man was confused and asked, "What do you mean?" To which Spinoza replied, "I am not moved by the death of my father because I know that everything in this world happens according to the laws of nature. And since my father was a part of this world, his death was also a part of the natural order. Therefore, it is foolish for me to grieve over something that is inevitable. The man did not understand Spinoza's answer and thought that he was being insensitive. But Spinoza continued to explain his philosophy. He said that emotions like grief and sorrow were not helpful because they did not change the course of events. Instead, they only caused unnecessary pain and suffering. The man still didn't understand and felt that Spinoza was too detached and unemotional. However, Spinoza insisted that his philosophy was not meant to make people cold and unfeeling, but rather to help them live a life of virtue and happiness. He believed that by understanding the laws of nature and living in accordance with them, we could achieve a state of peace of mind that was free from the constant turmoil of emotions. The man pondered Spinoza's words and realized that he himself had been living a life full of unnecessary worry and anxiety. He thanked Spinoza for his wisdom and left his house feeling enlightened and free. But the next day, he returned to Spinoza's house, determined to challenge his philosophy. He asked Spinoza a series of difficult questions, trying to catch him in a contradiction or a flaw in his reasoning. However, Spinoza answered each question calmly and logically, and the man was left even more convinced of the soundness of his philosophy. Before leaving, the man asked Spinoza a final question. He asked, "If your philosophy is so perfect and complete, why are you still alive? Why don't you put your ideas into practice and die happily, joyfully?" Spinoza was silent for a moment, and when he finally spoke, his voice was filled with sadness. He said, "I have been trying to die happily, but I cannot. You see, my body is full of pain and ailments, and I'm too attached to life to end it. I desire to live, but at the same time, I know that life is full of suffering. I am trapped between my desire to live and my knowledge that life is full of pain. I am not at peace, and therefore I cannot die happily." The man was shocked by Spinoza's words. He had come to challenge the great philosopher, but instead, he had discovered a shared humanity between them. He realized that even the wisest and most rational of people were not immune to the struggles and suffering of life. The man learned a valuable lesson that day. He learned that even though reason and logic could help us understand the world around us, they could not always make us happy. Sometimes life was messy and painful, and the best thing we could do was to accept it and try to make the best of it. So the man thanked Spinoza for his wisdom once again and went on his way, forever changed by his experience. It was a sad day for Spinoza. He had just revealed his deepest fears and struggles to a stranger, and he knew that he could never take back those words. He was afraid that the man would mock him or ridicule him, but he had been wrong. The man had only grown closer to him after hearing his confession. Spinoza felt a sense of relief knowing that he had been honest and open, but he was still afraid of what the future would hold. As the sun set, Spinoza retreated into his books and writings, seeking solace in the familiar pages. He knew that his philosophy could not solve all the problems of life, but he hoped that one day it would help others to find the answers they were seeking. And so the legend of Spinoza and the emotionless man was passed down through the ages, serving as a reminder that even the wisest of us are not immune to the struggles and complexities of life. What do you think of Spinoza's words? Did you find them enlightening, or did you disagree with them? Let us know your thoughts. That's all for today. Be sure to subscribe so you don't miss any new videos. And be sure to leave a big thumbs up if you enjoyed. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.